This video is why I love Enigma. Enigma first came on my radar after I watched A Blade in the Dark from 1983. The protagonist's girlfriend, Julia, was played by Laura Lamberti, aka Laura Nazinski. I was just really captivated by her. I thought she was beautiful, so I looked her up, looked at her filmography. She has not been in a lot of movies, but I saw there was this movie on her list from the late 80s called Enigma, and that it was labeled a horror movie. So I thought to myself, cool, hope I can see that sometime, it might be good. And as I was exploring giallo and other Italian cinema, I came to really love Lucio Fulci. After a while, I realized that Enigma was directed by Fulci. So then I had two ends to this movie, and I was like, I have to see it. So I made a greater effort to hunt it down. It's actually not hard to find. It is currently free on Tubi. Strangely enough, Laura is playing a younger character in this 1988 movie than she was playing in the 1983 movie, and yet she somehow looks younger too. I don't know, it's really weird. Anyway, so I watched Enigma last year and I loved it. And that's why we're here today. So like I said, Enigma is a Fulci horror movie from 88. Some sites say 87. Pretty sure it's 88. It is starring Laura Lamberti, Milojano Zorojevic, and a bunch of other people. It takes place in an all-girls school, and it follows the supernatural occurrences that take place after one misfit bullied student has been put in the hospital. Bullied to the point of being in the hospital. I will say there is a lot of conflicting information out there about this movie, or either unclear information. First of all, I'm not sure, is this a boarding school for high schoolers, or is this like university age? Are these college kids or are these high school kids? I'm pretty sure it's college kids given the adults they date. But there's also some confusion about where the movie was filmed, and then like some websites say it's an 87 movie and some say it's an 88 movie. I also read the entire plot as it's written on Wikipedia, and a lot of it is just very wrong. It's like it's saying things that didn't happen, or like not in the way that they happened. It's bizarre. Even the Letterboxd blurb says, the spirit of a comatose teenage girl possesses the body of a newcomer to her girls' boarding school in order to enact bloody revenge against the elitist lingerie-clad co-eds responsible for her condition. But they weren't in lingerie. Like, where did that come from? I also took a moment to finally look up what co-eds means, because I'm like, are they co-eds if it's a girls' school? Well, apparently, as a noun, co-ed can be defined as a woman who attends college. So I guess they're co-eds. They're just not lingerie clad. Anyway, so let's go on with this video. These types of videos aren't really like plot reviews. They're not even critical reviews. It's basically just me cherry picking the things I love about this movie and talking about them with you. Because a lot of times, like, that's the question people have. They want to know, like, well, why do you love that so much? Like, why do you like this movie? So this is why. As always, these videos do have spoilers. However, I want to say that because this movie doesn't have like a lot of twists or turns or secrets, I feel like you could watch this video without having seen the movie. I'm not really spoiling anything too fantastic for you. It's not a movie with a secret or anything. So I don't think it's harmful for you to watch this before you've seen Enigma. And with that, let's start the cherry picking why I love Enigma. First of all, this is set in an all-girls school, like I said, and the all-girls school is one of my favorite settings for a movie. And this one is strict, complete with a tight bun-wearing headmistress. It has uniforms, they dress for dinner, like, it's fantastic. The school is beautiful, by the way. It's one of those interiors that you really feel like you start to know your way around. It's like you kind of get comfortable there. And we need to talk about this opening sequence, this opening scene. Are you kidding me? This is a masterpiece. We have this like close-up of makeup being applied on the face, and this song is like this 80s, obscure sounding 80s pop ballad. It is just so good. We sing it all the time in my house. And then the like title of the movie appears over Kathy's eye, and it's just so gorgeous and striking. I have even done recreations of a recreation photo shoot from this scene before. Side note, okay, when I first saw this, I wasn't looking at Kathy and thinking of her as like a less than. I wasn't thinking of her as the weird girl or anything. I thought she was just like a girl getting ready for a date. And it took me a while to realize like, oh, she is the target. She is the bullied. I don't love the prank. I don't really like bullying in movies, but I thought this was like tolerable. It was fine. It wasn't too emotional or anything. Just to fill you in, Kathy is the weird girl and she gets bullied and they have an accident and Kathy gets put in the hospital. And basically all the other girls in the school were in on it. Okay, the next thing I love about this movie is the unnatural bad acting. It is so bad. The acting is so bad and the dialogue is so bad. It is just so awkward and weird, but it's hilarious. Like, it's bad in a really entertaining way, not a way that you get impatient with. The headmistress, Miss Jones, she wins the award for being the worst actor in the movie. She's awesome. But listen, I am not the person to ask if a movie is dubbed or not. I can't tell. Isn't that so weird? I just cannot tell. I spend a lot of my time watching these Italian movies trying to figure out if they've been dubbed. I don't know. They do so good. But I don't know if dubbing played a role in how awkward this movie sounds, but it's like so good. Like, some of the dialogue is so stupid. So there's a little example I wrote down where Kathy's in her coma in the bed, and there's a nurse and the doctor are standing there. And the doctor says something about Kathy, and the nurse is like, she's in a coma. And the doctor says, exactly. I love the score in this movie. It is beautiful and mysterious at times, and then other times it's very like electronic, intense 80s sounding. I think it's very solid. It's really like, it just helps set the atmosphere for the movie. It's not something that, you know, as opposed to maybe a 70s giallo, it's not really something that you'd put on to listen to at the house or anything, but I think it's really fitting for the movie. The colors of this movie. Well, this movie is blue. Blue is the strongest color that comes through in this movie. I think it's really beautiful. It's pretty much this blue, which is why I wore this. So we see it in the uniforms and everything. We see it a lot. It has just this like blue shadow over it. And I really love strong use of color in movies, especially when it's like thematic, like the theme is blue. I really enjoy that about this flick. The characters. So Laura Lamberti plays our main character, Eva. Eva's the new girl at the boarding school who arrives after Kathy is hospitalized. She is just so pretty. She has this like strong jawline and just like this square face and this long neck and these like perfect lips. And she's lovely. I love her. And the character of Eva is really cool too. It's a shame that we don't really get to fully know Eva because like 50% of the time or more she's possessed by Kathy. But Eva's one of those characters that comes from like a troubled past. She apparently had a breakdown before she got there, and you can tell right away she's really rebellious. She's boy crazy. She'll sneak out, like very confident. I love that kind of character. She also seems to be pretty dramatic, which is entertaining. The other characters are great too. They're just a lot of 80s girls with 80s hair and big sweatshirts. And they all have kind of like punchable faces, which just supports the fact that they're all evil bitches. Okay, Jenny, let's get one thing straight. For me, a successful year means making out with as many gorgeous boys as possible. That line delivered by Eva, that's when I knew I love this movie. In this film, we also get a little bit of 80s fitness. You know, like what you see in Murder Rock, like what you see in Killer Workout, like what you see in Death Spa. That is some good stuff. Unfortunately, the scene doesn't last long, but we do get introduced to their creepy, creepy gym teacher, Fred. I may have a fat ass, but if you slap it again, I'll slap your face. This movie has a bunch of ridiculous moments, big and small, that are quite comedic. For example, Fred, the gym teacher, he's in his gym, but they're about to close up. And Mary, the custodian, is in there cleaning, scrubbing the floor. And Fred is like, Mary, what are you still doing here? Get out of here. And he like grabs her by the arms and like pushes her out the door. And then he's like, Mary, you forgot your bucket. Like, of course she forgot her bucket. You forcibly removed her. The deaths in this movie are so silly. Our first death is Fred. He is looking in the mirror and his reflection comes out of the mirror and his reflection strangles him. This death makes absolutely no sense. But perhaps our catchphrase here should be, it's Fulci, so it doesn't matter. Just in case you forgot or you need context, Kathy is our hospitalized, bullied student, and she is the one causing these deaths telepathically. Now, I'm not sure how you can cause a reflection to come out of the mirror and kill somebody, but that's what she's doing. There are just little moments, like little scenes in this movie that I really love, and one of them is the night when all the girls are gathered in one of the rooms. I think it's Kim's room. They're gathered up in their pajamas and they're smoking weed and they're just staying up and talking and gossiping and stuff. I think that's just a really cute, well, I love sleepovers. So I think it's a really cute little sleepover moment, even though these girls are generally awful people. They're all just kind of like laughing about what happened to Kathy and they're making fun of Kathy's mom, the housekeeper. They're also gossiping a little bit about how on Friday nights, Kathy's mom and the other leaders of the school go into Kathy's mom's room and do weird things. I wish we could have had a little bit of elaboration on that because it's giving me like Suspiria conspiracy vibes. I love that Fulci made a little appearance in this movie, which he does every so often. It always just makes me smile to see him on screen. He made an appearance as an investigator. And then I love the weird reaction that everybody had to Fred dying. Like, nobody had a reaction. They just, like, told the next person next to them before they even had time to, like, let it sink in. It was so weird. Fred kicked the bucket. Like the sleepover moment, there's another little moment that I just love in this movie where all the girls are like laying out on this grassy lawn and there's these like trees with green leaves and like the sun is shining on them. It is just so beautiful. It looks like heaven. I love that little scene, but it is just so brief. But I think it's just precious looking. Even though it's just a fleeting moment, it just like fills me with peace. Another aspect I love about this movie is the time period. Hey, it came out in my birth year, by the way. The time period of the late 80s, I just love it. I love the music and the style and what was coming out at the time. It reminds me a lot of my favorite show, Degrassi Junior High and Degrassi High, just because of that era and sort of the low budget, bad acting feel to it. It's just a really cute time period. The snails. I had to mention the snails. One of the most iconic death scenes ever. Death by snails. If you haven't seen this movie, one of these bitches gets covered up by snails and slugs and shit all over her. Props to this actress, man. Like, what? This is another thing I'd like to know more about when it came to production of this movie. Do they really put all these huge snails all over this naked girl in the bed? I mean, I guess they did. Anyway, this whole thing is so Fulci. It doesn't make any sense, but the snails kill her. It doesn't matter because it's Fulci. It's actually pretty hard to watch because the scene is so prolonged and just so zoomed in and it's nasty, but I really hate snails and slugs. I love the ridiculousness of this hospital setting. Like, it looks like a Goosebumps episode. Everything is like green and drippy and creepy and like Kathy looks like this weird little green alien and she's all crusty and just laying there with all these wires all over her. It just does not look like a real hospital. I love when Eva has her like seizure thing / mental breakdown thing and she starts like shaking and then throwing all these items at her roommate. And then there's this like great 80s guitar solo wailing in the background. I think that was really well done. They don't really explain too well what all this is about, but it doesn't matter because it's Fulci. So another little ridiculous moment is where after Eva has her breakdown, she is laying in the bed and the doctor, the sexy doctor, comes in and he looks at her. I think he injects her with something, and then she just like lays a big smooch on him. She like makes out with him. And then he like gets up and the headmistress comes in and she's like, "How is she?" And the doctor's like, "Good." Another great moment in this movie is when Grace and Eva sneak into the museum because Grace thinks she lost her earring in there. Anyway, they get separated and Grace kind of starts hallucinating. So the first thing she sees is she's like looking up at this painting on the ceiling and it starts bleeding onto her face. It's really, really cool. And then she goes away from that and she sees this like giant snake. Oh yeah, and she sees a decapitated head. And then a statue comes to life and strangles her. Also, I have to mention another iconic moment in this movie is the nightmare the doctor has. So the doctor and Eva have become romantically involved. And the doctor has this nightmare where they're like doing it, and then Eva starts biting off chunks of his flesh, finishes him off by biting off his bottom lip. It's pretty brutal, actually. And probably one of the coolest parts of this movie is when Kim, the meanest girl of all, is trying to like wake up her boyfriend, and she pulls the covers back and he's decapitated. She like freaks out, and then she keeps running into everyone else's room, and there's a decapitated body on the bed in everyone else's room. And it was just really intense and fun. Anyway, so she ends up falling out the window, you know, because that's what you do when you're freaking out. And her boyfriend isn't decapitated. It was just a hallucination. So he gets out of the bed and he sees her on the ground outside, and then those like crazy European blinds come down and cut his head off, and then his head rolls right into Kim's arms. So romantic. So what's supposed to be happening in this movie is that Kathy is possessing Eva. It's kind of like a shared consciousness situation. I'm not even really sure why Kathy's possessing Eva, because these murders aren't done by Eva's hands. They're just remotely done. So I'm not really sure what the point of Eva's possession is. I don't even know how Kathy found Eva. Like, how did Kathy know that Eva was coming to school and that it happened to be right when Kathy was leaving? I don't know. It's not supposed to make sense. It's Fulci. I love the climax of this movie. I've skipped over a lot of the plot points, but it basically comes down to Eva and her friend are in the morgue of the hospital, and it's just all stone and it's really beautiful. And Eva's a total badass. She's a fully realized evil villain at this point, and she's always like, "I could do anything I want to you." Her actor plays such a good badass. I love whenever she like turns evil and you can just see it on her face. She's great. I love Laura. And have to mention the final scene where Kathy's mom, the housekeeper at school, ends up pulling the plug on Kathy to presumably stop the killings. And finally, the chaos is over. Shout out to the poster / cover of this movie that has nothing to do with the movie at all. Who is that girl? Who is the spider face? What's the spider hair? We don't know. Those are the things I love about Enigma. This story doesn't make sense, but it doesn't really matter because of all the reasons I listed above. You can't really ask a lot of questions during this movie. You need to not resist, just enjoy the ride. Lay back, enjoy the ride. It's very surreal, nonsensical, and it's kind of like a fantasy. But I think visually and atmospherically it has a lot to offer. And of course, you should bring your sense of humor when you watch this because it is quite funny. So now that I've watched this a handful of times, I'm really curious about a lot more about this movie. Like questions about production and the people involved. I'm curious for more details, and IMDb and Wikipedia don't really offer that much. There is a documentary on Fulci in his late 80s movies. That might have some good information in there. Enigma itself seems to be shrouded in mystery, even though it's not really that old. Anyway, in conclusion, I say this a lot about imperfect films, that it is lovable. This movie is so lovable. It is endearing. It gives me just such a warm, fuzzy feeling, and it is definitely, like, it is a great example of a film that is so good it's bad. It is a great time to watch by yourself or with friends, to make fun of it and to laugh at it. Like I said, Enigma is streaming for free on Tubi right now, so watch it if you haven't seen it already. Oh, I forgot, I have it on DVD and I was gonna like bring the DVD and hold it. Whatever, I can barely do anything these days. That's it for this video. What I loved about Enigma 1988. Let me know if you have seen it in the comments. Let's talk about it. And ciao for now!